All right, we're recording. Chris, we're back. No guest today. I thought having Aaron on the show, by the way, I liked having a third person. He's a
It gave it
very,
some energy.
yeah, he's a very thoughtful dude. And I think that like there were tech issues, but I love like digging into in talking to him personally that collision between the Brooklyn Jew and the Texas conservative Episcopalian or whatever he said he was.
Mhm.
I love like that aspect of it. So,
It was neat.
all right, you said you came up with some names for what we're doing here.
Yeah,
Let's. It's funny. I
yeah.
was thinking
So
about it
it's like
last night
trying
as
to, and
well.
it's and it's like in this. Well, as we're spitballing, keep in mind that I think they mostly suck, but let's start them anyway. Um, Campaign gamble, power play
Okay.
prediction, poly bet pros, vote wager, ballot blitz, capital chances,
Ooh, I like that.
political purse, policy payouts. My personal favorite is ballot bets, um, campaign coin, elective edge, but that doesn't kind of, you know.
I just thought of one. Can I run it by
Yeah,
you?
go, yeah.
Bully pulpit.
Bully pulpit. I like it.
All right, bully
Right,
pulpit.
and you know the entomology from that, right? It's
No,
Theodore,
I
it's
mean it
Theodore,
makes me think of a priest from the pulpit.
it's Theodore Roosevelt, and he
Hmm.
said that that the presidency was the best bully pulpit, and he was famous. I mean, he's caricatured now, but he was famous for saying bully, bully, and good, good, and so a
Ah.
platform for good. But it was a bully pulpit, and the idea
So
of
when
bully
he's
pulpit,
so when he said bully, it wasn't like a bully. He meant like it was a good pulpit. It was the best good
bully,
pulpit.
like right,
Ah,
it
it
would
was
be the
bully.
equivalent of saying right on, like or that's great or something. But that's when he said a bully pulpit is that the presidency, one of the things along with the powers they have. There's an essay somewhere about it, but that he said that the most effective thing a president can do is be a bully, but like use the office as a bully pulpit. You know.
Mm. Wonder what that says about us as a people, as a country, that it went from like meaning a right on, like groovy, good kind of
Yeah.
dude to like to being an asshole.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think it's a longer don't get me go down the road of the get off my lawn discussion on civics. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I mean everything gets
Uh-huh.
kind of twisted and prostituted. But in politics, it has a very specific meaning.
Well, let me ask you a question about Trump and Roosevelt. I like Teddy Roosevelt a little from the limited amount that I know about him. He also left office and came back for another term in the Progressive Party, right?
Well, kind of. By the way, it's
Because this was
fabulous. This is William Safire's Political Dictionary, and I'm going to look up bully pulpit.
ooh,
Right, and it is the greatest. It's like
okay.
if you can find an old. Aha, bully pulpit, active use of the presidency's prestige and high visibility to inspire or moralize. Theodore Roosevelt took an unrestricted view of his job. He never hesitated to take his case directly to the people from a presidency he called the bully pulpit. Um,
Wow, inspire or moralize. That I don't think that's what we mean when we say bully pulpit now.
yeah, I mean, when I hear bully pulpit, that's kind of what I think. I kind of think of it as the classical thing. But anyway, but it's if you're a political junkie, this is kind of one of the great bathroom reads of all time because it's just short entry. I mean, I found it really quick. I mean, we didn't plan this. I mean, I just happened to have it there, but but everything that from maiden speech to what mainstream wids, milk for Hottentots, a lot of stuff that isn't kind of used anywhere else. Political graveyard, gray eminence, and it's really interesting because William Safire goes back and he kind of finds the roots of them. Where did these things start? But in my misspent youth, yeah, sorry. In my misspent
No,
youth,
it's funny.
I'm actually flip through the book and say,
wondering if I could find that.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I could find that book. There's like a $5 bookstore not far from me. I'm like, and they have a lot of weird books, not weird, but like books that aren't mainstream. Maybe
it's
even like some out of print books.
You're either going to get this book for $5 or it's going to be on Amazon for $1,500. It's going to be one of those things. I'm always amazed at some of my political library stuff that I've just had for years. I thought, that'd be a nice gift. And I go to look at it and it's like $750. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I just had a name for the show pop into my head, and it's going to be great because two dudes doing a podcast, Minutemen.
Minutemen, right?
Wasn't that the name for the militia in Lexington and Concord? Weren't they the militiamen, the Minutemen?
They called them the Minutemen because they would be ready in a minute. And I have a profile. There was a profile of me written years ago. And actually, I have it up on the wall over there. And it's even worse than Minuteman. It's called 30-Second Man.
That is actually worse because that's too specific.
Right. 30-second and disappointed man.
Right. Right.
I guess they couldn't.
Well, the key is to leave them wanting more, Chris. That way they'll come back.
Right.
I like the. Was that all the names that you had written down?
Capital Chances, Vote Vista. I just kind of went through and did a thesaurus on stuff really quick this morning while we were, on a half hour. I got to go back and, because
what about Washington Wager?
Yeah, but we want to do stuff all over, right? I think it's true. Political. I think it's political. I mean, I think the words are political or politico. I think it's political. And something. Actually, maybe it's not political. Maybe it's election. That's what we're doing. Election and something with a wager. And it can be a payout. It can be the act of it. Electioneering. It needs a second thing.
Did I ever tell you what the first name for Fantasy Elect was?
No.
It was Polyfantasy.
Ooh.
And in my mind, it was like one word, like poli-sci, like in school, like polyfantasy. But when I pitched it, everybody was like, oh, it's a great idea. That name is horrible. And I was like, well, no, it's like polyfantasy, like poli-sci in school. And they're like, give it a few seconds and just think about why that name is. Because I had never really deeply thought about it. And then I thought about it for about 5 seconds. And I was like, you're right. That's a horrible name. We could get a shit ton of downloads.
Yeah,
but
right.
I think people would be disappointed when they open the app.
So speaking of people online and poly fantasy, the woman that ran for House of Delegates in Virginia lost, who was and she lost.
Gibbons.
Yeah,
Susanna Gibson.
And she had an article in Politico this week that if you read it, you went, did I just have a fucking stroke for the past 6 months? Basically, I mean, here's a woman that was, she had 5,700 customers, and she was live streaming sex acts that you would pay her for. You would pay her to have anal, you would pay her to pee in her husband's mouth, or whatever this shit is, right? And she said that she said when it happened on 9/11, and I'm reading the article. It's a Go on 9/11 article, and it was when she got blown up, and it was a it was a drop box that some Republican operative found on the dark web, and I'm like, you were on fucking Pornhub. You were live streaming on platforms with millions of people. Did you think somehow that this was going to? I mean, this isn't like you filmed it with your girlfriend and 20 years ago and somebody found it and popped it out. This was like you were
Right.
like listening but there was no pushback in the article at all. And basically it was like, oh, that's a shame. And she was like, I've hired lawyers to make sure this doesn't happen to moms everywhere. And I'm like, what? But it was really it was
I
this
don't think
amazing.
moms everywhere are. Yeah, I don't think moms
Yeah.
everywhere are performing on ChatterBait.
Yeah, right. There was an anti-gun group called Moms Demand Action, and I have a friend of mine who's a Democratic consultant, and he says, they should really change the name of that.
They really should.
And he said, because if you just go into Google and you type in that, you're not getting gun control. You're getting other phallic-like objects. But
do you remember we touched briefly in maybe our first episode on Susanna Gibbons or Gibson? I think it's Gibson.
Gibson.
And I actually did not read the Politico article, but I did read some tweets about the article, some other people's hot takes on it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I always felt like she played it wrong. She's playing it as a victim, and people don't like victim mentality, especially like if you're in a competitive area. Republicans hate the victim mentality. You need to be more moderated. I think she should have leaned into it, and now I think she's just perpetuating it. Like she's trying to say that there were crimes committed, and it's like maybe maybe the nuance of the reality is that a crime was committed because you're not supposed to release material that was previously recorded against. If anything, potentially IP laws were broken as well. I don't know, but the point is that isn't a very politically savvy way to deal with it. Again, I think I said at the time, I think she should have said, it shows I'm willing to do anything to balance a budget. Like make a joke out of it.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Forgetting whatever the legalities are, a reasonable person would say live streaming you having sex on major platforms, you've kind of relinquished your claims to privacy. Number one,
100%.
But number two, I mean, she could have made a joke out of it, and she could have said, "Yeah, it probably wasn't the brightest thing, but I'm kind of hot, and my husband and I thought it would be fun and no harm." And leave it, because it wasn't like, and most people would have gone, right? Most people would have gone, okay.
Totally.
But it's like, but now she's trying to, pretend that she's, one of the widowed belles of the, widows of the Confederate War, and she's like, oh my Scarlet. I mean, get the fuck out of here.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Like if you pay me enough money, you can watch me pee. I mean, Jesus. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Right.
But again, I think you're absolutely right that if she had made kind of a joke out of it and just kind of said, yeah, it was a dumb thing to do, people would go, yeah, it was a dumb thing to do. And you know what else is dumb? Our tax laws in Virginia. I mean, you roll like that.
Exactly. I mean, she may still have lost that race because the timing of when it came out, it was close to the election and whatever. I don't know her district, but the way she handled it then may have set her up for a future election victory, and people would have forgotten. The way she's doing it now is you're almost ingraining it in people's minds, and you're now tying yourself to basically a negative opinion of you that has almost less to do now with what you did in the sex acts with your husband and more about you just playing victim. It makes you less likable, that I think stains you for longer.
Whereas, well, similar to Katie Hill in California. Katie Hill was a congressman outside of L.A. and
Hmm.
she got kind of swept in a wave here, and then it came out like her and her husband were poly. Okay, back to
Hmm.
your maybe you could have found her if you'd done a search, and uh, but
Right.
but she was also doing it with members of her staff,
Oh
which
shit.
breaks a lot of laws. Yeah, which breaks a lot of laws. And there's like apparently easily found pictures of her naked, and her chief of staff or legislative aide or naked, and she's combing her hair while
Hmm.
naked, and you kind of go like, and she claimed, oh, I was a victim and it was Republican dirty tricks, and it's like, your sex life is your sex life, I guess. Um, but when there's and that one of her aides said I was scared of her because she was vengeful, and there was maybe not vengeful, but she was worried about retaliation, and so when you're intimidating somebody that works under you, and you're having a sexual relationship with them, it's like you're not a victim, right? And she wrote a book that
I
apparently
think I know exactly who you're talking about, Chris. I was just reading an article. She was just forced to pay her ex-husband's legal fees, I think, because she sued
yeah,
and lost.
yeah,
Right?
right, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Within the last year, I think that ruling came, maybe a while back, but I was just reading an article about her.
yeah. Actually, my wife gave her money when she first ran,
Wow.
and you know I don't know what she gave her. My wife gave her money, and she said, my wife said, "Oh, I just contributed to Katie Hill," and I said, "She's fucking crazy, right?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "She's crazy." And she goes, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because this is what I've done for 40 years of my life. I don't even have to meet her. I can look
Right.
at them and I go, oh, you're crazy, right?" And like you could see how crazy she was from afar. I mean, and it's like, again, at a certain point, if you
Yeah.
do this enough, you kind of see them. And sure enough, she was. And again, and it wasn't like the bar, as George Santos showed us, the bar is not that high, you know,
No.
for getting elected.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is be relatively normal and you'll be
Yeah.
okay. Um, but anyway,
Yeah.
so I'm not surprised she lost. And there was supposed to be like a Netflix movie about her or something that never happened.
Mm.
Because I have a feeling it's one of these things when they kind of got into it, they were like, oh my God, none of this makes sense. And,
Yeah. Well, it was
but
interesting that what the piece that I read was actually rather defensive of her in that how it was very kind of from the slant of the patriarchy was damaging this rising woman star, blah blah blah. Um, and that could very well be true. I don't know the details, but I will say, like in reading the article and remembering what happened, what really brought her down was the affair with her staff, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
you
the
know,
idea that like the very people who espouse, and I think rightfully so, these sexual harassment workplace values, preventing that from happening, it sexual harassment is not defined as specifically being committed by a man, right? So it's like you, and it doesn't even have to be the two people that are in the relationship. The people in the office that are seeing something unethical happening in front of them, and they can claim that that is sexual harassment, right? So I just felt like I feel like she brought it on herself. I mean, if you are going to sleep around, great, do it outside of your subordinates. Do it outside of your office. We used to say, "Don't shit where you eat." I feel like that needs to come back.
yeah. We had a similar one. It was like, and I used to always say this on campaigns that I would be involved with when there would be young staffers and they would kind of that, and and I would say rule number one: don't fuck the help, because
For sure.
because there's inappropriate power relationships inherent in it. And
Mm-hmm.
B, it's just bad form. Now, I know people that have dated and gotten married and stuff out of it, and out of campaigns, they've met on campaigns, but it was kind of a traditional courtship as opposed to like, I'm going to have sex. with these.
Right.
And again,
Right.
it's just bad because it doesn't end well. Especially if there's a
I,
disparity. If you're two junior staffers, good for you. But
yeah,
if you are a superior and a subordinate, um, no,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
and
100%.
by the
And
way,
even if you do have the best intentions, as like a white guy, I understand very clearly. You may want to court and all those things. Great, do it after your job. Do it after your election. Go find another job. Then do it. Do not. It can always turn. It can always go the other way. It can always go against you, even if your intentions were legitimately like, oh, I we may get married. Like I see this person as a potential like long term partner.
right? Yeah,
Don't be a
no,
fool.
don't be a fool. And again, because of the power disparity, and frankly,
Yeah.
there are young men and young women who want to sleep, who want to star fuck. You're kind of pathetic if you're trying to star fuck a campaign person, but that's welcome to Washington D.C. Which was the famous Ronald Reagan line. He said, "Politics is show business for ugly people." Um,
Yeah. Speaking of show business for ugly people, by the way,
yeah.
one of our stories this week, I have to ask you, is Dean Phillips worth drafting at all on a fantasy team? I saw today there's a new piece out about how much he's paying people to show up to rallies. And he even went so far as to say, what did he say? He said Biden's impeachment inquiry may make him unelectable. He's actually now a really good mouthpiece for the RNC. So is he shooting himself in the foot? Is he worth drafting?
Um, yeah, he's worth drafting, I think. Not high, but he's worth drafting
Okay.
because if somehow he gets on the ballot someplace, I mean, don't forget, Biden is a president with a 37 favorable and who over three-quarters of his own party thinks shouldn't run. So if Phillips
Mm,
can get on the ballot someplace, I think he could do some serious damage. And if I were the Biden
interesting.
campaign, I would be throwing everything I possibly could at keeping him off ballots everywhere
Hmm.
because I
I
think
actually think
it's
that's
not
what they're doing, right? I think they're
yeah,
trying to cancel basically the primary, aren't they?
right, yeah, and it's not. It's got literally nothing to do with Dean Phillips. It's got literally Dean Phillips in this case is filling the space of none of the above. None of the above. I don't like these people.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I also saw today, right before this, Manchin is now. I don't remember how he said it, but he's basically doing a road show to see if there's an appetite for his message. I think is that's a very kind of generic way of saying his actual words, but basically he's going on the road show to see if he has any traction. Is he
Yeah.
going to get any traction? Is there any traction in the Republican Party for such a blue dog?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
in the Democratic Party.
No. There is traction for him to run as an independent. I don't. He cannot win as an
Okay.
independent. I think he can throw the election to the House of Representatives, which is more interesting. I think. I saw a
Yeah, for
fun.
sure.
I saw a fun map on Twitter. Somebody did a fairly realistic version of an electoral map, and it all comes down to um, Omaha, Nebraska, in the second congressional district. That would be 270 for Biden or Trump, and it's a
Wow.
Democratic, but literally you could say that it all comes down to that, and which would be
Huh.
if you're a political junkie, it's an enormous amount of fun. I think there is an appetite for a third party. I don't think it's Joe Manchin. Um,
Hmm.
you know, um, like
Is
who
it
do you
more
agree?
RFK?
Yeah, I think I think the problem with RFK is that he's too kooky. I think
Hmm.
he loses that. I think that like the third party candidate, Josh Shapiro out of Pennsylvania,
Hmm.
somebody young, smart.
Democrat though.
Yeah, yeah, but I think he could be a third party candidate. I think
What about Liz Cheney?
No, no. I mean, no. I mean, she has no appeal anywhere with anything. I mean,
Mm.
she's not going to get Democrats. She's not going to get Republicans. I mean, when you hear people like that
Mm-hmm.
saying, "I may run for president," it's like, stop. I mean, you're running for a show on CNN is what you're running for. Um, you
Right,
know,
right.
I mean, you
Okay,
have to have. Yeah,
this actually, I have to ask you this.
yeah,
This has come up in my mind, I think, for
sure.
years, and I've never had anybody to ask, and I feel like you know.
Yeah.
I look at these people running for president, and let's just say the Republicans, because that's where there's the most of them. So let's say Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, just those two, for example.
Right.
Uh, I'm going to use Chris Christie as a very specific example. When was the last time he had an actual job? Like, how do these people survive? Are they just fronting, getting, like, do they just have front gigs? Like, I'm going to go give a speech, and the people who really are like pocketing them as future candidates just divvying out money? Because when was the last Chris Christie was governor until what, 2014,
18,
2020,
2018.
2018? Okay. He hasn't had a job since then, I don't think. At least not one that he actually has to show up to, because he's always on the news.
Right. I mean, if you were a former governor, I mean, don't forget also Christie was a U.S. attorney before that. And if you
Yeah.
are, and if you're Christie, you've got a tremendous amount of legal knowledge and also institutional knowledge. And and New Jersey is a very complicated state with a lot of issues. So he could sit on, and again, I don't know how he makes his money, but he could sit on a number of boards and a number of think tanks, because whatever you think of him politically, he's a smart and insightful guy, and
Sure.
he had, by most accounts, a successful tenure running a very complicated state. So on
Mm.
regulatory issues or mass transit issues alone, he would have valuable input, I would think.
Mm.
Um, so
Yeah.
he
Okay.
could sit on those kind of board, like, I mean, the New York, the Port Authority in New York. I mean, he brings
Mm.
institutional knowledge. I don't think he sits on it, but he would be somebody they could hire for, they would hire him for 150 grand a year as a consultant, and he would
Mm.
be worth that money by simply saying you can't do it that way, you got to do it this way, because that kind of thing. And or for contractors, like, if you're a cement contractor in New York, it's like, it makes sense that you want to be or an asphalt person. You're going to need somebody who knows the environmental regulations about what happens to the runoff when it rains and you're laying down asphalt. I don't fucking know, but there's going to be a law. So somebody like Christie would know that, or could find the
When I
people.
hear you say when
Yeah,
I hear you say in New Jersey you're a
con-
cement company, I think of the mob. I just thought to myself, like, oh yeah, he's consulting for the mob. It makes perfect sense for a former U.S. attorney.
yeah, right, right. The,
Um,
but
okay,
yeah,
all right. Well,
so,
I mean,
that's really
I
cool.
know, like, Nikki Haley. Apparently, she's given a shit ton of speeches and making a ton of money that way. Goldman Sachs, whatever. I don't know whoever else, but
Yeah, you can make
it
shocking
does seem to
amounts of
me
money.
that,
I mean,
yeah, nobody.
Hillary.
Why isn't anybody ever asking me to get? I can talk. I can talk for an hour and cash a check. I'm good at that.
Well, apparently, I mean, Hillary
I don't know.
famously made what, $500,000 in 6 months before she announced, and Bernie Sanders in
Mm-hmm.
2016, and Bernie Sanders just beat her brains in on it. Because to most people,
Yeah,
you
he
kind of
did.
go like, really, you're a multimillionaire already, and you're going to run for president, and so you give these Wall Street speeches for 600. I mean, come on. It's going
I
back
don't
to
know if
the
this is true.
yeah.
I don't know how true this is. I haven't looked into the facts, but somebody posted on Twitter yesterday, the day before, and it was a look at politicians' net worth pre-office and then
Mhm.
post-office. And the Clintons were listed as entering with like 1.3 million
Mhm.
and now $200 million, which
Yeah.
Clinton Global Initiative, I don't know, maybe that makes sense, book deals, stuff like that. My point being, however, though, to your point, uh, regardless of who would have been a better president, Hillary or Trump, whatever, you are an incredibly maybe self-defeating person to be worth $100 million already and still be giving speeches to the elite, like, and let that be used, just whether or not you're doing anything untoward, it's not the point. It's such bad optics, and you don't need the money. Why are you doing it? Is 100 million not enough? 200 million not enough?
There is the answer is no. You know, there is also a class of politician that once you become a certain level, you lack peers to say, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" Because
Right.
what she needed, and again, I mean, you know, I'm not going to pick on her. You can pick just about
Yeah, no,
anyone in
it's not,
politics,
certainly not.
and you kind of, and there's nobody to tell
Yeah,
you, no, don't do that. What are you, crazy? You know, Rudy Giuliani
right.
lacking peers, and you know, like, what are you, nuts? You know, the ton of, you know, Republican officials and election officials and lawyers who got sucked up into this crazy vote conspiracy thing. Um,
Yeah,
and you kind of go in like nobody. And if you work in politics, everything is transparent. You can figure it out in like 2 seconds. And it's not that hard,
yeah.
but nobody told them, you know, I mean, like, don't do this. This is stupid because you lack peers. You're going to fail.
Interesting.
And that's very
I
common. I
love that
mean,
you brought up.
yeah.
I love that you brought up Giuliani, because that is going to be one of our over/under questions on how much that defamation is going to cost him. But I have to ask you: have you
Mhm.
seen this, where Trump is now selling fabric from his booking suit?
No, it's awesome. No, it's great.
It is awesome, and it's a little bit like the Shroud of Turin. I get this
That's
feeling of
perfect.
like,
That's perfect.
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I just love, regardless of whether I think somebody should be in charge of anything, I love the creativity of how do you like squeeze every penny from your follower. I just think it's such a degree of brilliance.
It's fabulous. And honestly, I would have, if I had known about that and it was fairly reasonable, I mean, it would be like buying a cameo video for somebody. I would have bought a piece of it, had it framed, and sent it to
Yeah,
somebody for Christmas. I mean, I would have
fuck
sent it to
yeah.
all my political friends.
Actually, if you look in our show notes that from that you're on, and we can put it in the notes. There's a link to you can
Okay.
probably buy it still. I don't know, because it's like just a little square, so he can. I figure out of the suit, he'll probably get 10,000 of these, because it's a very small swatch of fabric.
It's,
Um,
yeah. It's like a
okay,
relic, a medieval relic, right?
yeah,
You're
for
afraid of it.
sure.
And you would need like a little, like a Buddha
Yeah.
stone in your house with a picture of Trump, maybe you shaking hands with Trump and the thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. Having been in Vietnam, by the way, like every house has these things, and you put fresh fruit out for the spirits
Yeah.
every month, and yeah, it's amazing.
Right.
Um,
But you just have your
all right, I
credit
got to
card.
get your thoughts on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's for sure. Um, because we are so close to Christmas, I think that there's something very kind of interesting about this. Have you seen the blowback on Iowa, the governor Kim Reynolds, because there's a satanic temple in the state house?
Yeah. I saw that, and it's like and I hate to say it, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun.
It is.
What's really bad is when it no longer becomes fun, and it's like I have a friend of mine who says there's nothing worse than a Satanist without a sense of humor.
Ah,
And I mean, I'm all for people tweaking the body politic within reason. I mean,
well, so my understanding is that she's getting the blowback, but I don't know that she should. My understanding was it was the Trump executive order from 2017 that allowed religious presentations to go up and whatever. Could be wrong, not 100% certain. That's my understanding. I haven't read the executive order. That's what's being reported.
Mhm.
I it's one of my delights in life when there are unintended consequences, because then you see like every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? I love that law of physics. And this is kind of one of those, right? Where one side said there should be, we want a more robust separation of church and state. And another side said, no, we're a Christian country, so you can put up these religious things inside. And the other side said, okay, well, let's see about that. Right. And that tit for tat for me, watching it play out, to me, it is a playing out of cultural dynamics that is so interesting to watch that I just can't pull myself away from it. And when it's funny as well.
Yeah, it's funny. And most people, most voters are kind of fairly reasonable about it. They know when something is being onerous and theocratic, for lack of a better word. And when some of it is just kind of a traditional thing, and nobody really cares about, if there's a manger and a menorah in a state capitol, you walk past it without doing anything. When it becomes more than that. And again, and I always get a big kick out of a lot of municipalities, like you go past them, and they've got a major and a menorah and this, and it's like it's all this like jammed into one space, and it looks like that stupid bumper sticker coexist. By the way, did you ever hear the story about the coexist bumper sticker? You've seen that bumper sticker
with like the different Wiccan images, right? The witch symbology.
Well, there's also like a cross and a.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the crescent from Islam. Yeah.
All the different religions. So here's the great story about it. So it was apparently, and I want to say it was either North Carolina or South Carolina, but it was a bunch of college kids who were doing like an art project for some school event. And they were like, let's come up with this. And like literally it was like two students came up with the thing. And everyone, oh, that's pretty cool. And then
that is pretty cool.
It wasn't copyrighted. It wasn't anything. And so basically different companies have taken that and made millions out of licensing that and boned the students. There was a great kind of like, they just screwed them. And these kids have never seen a dime out of it, but it was great. I mean, it was kind of a neat story.
That is a very interesting story. I never knew that. I've seen that. And now there are, like you said, I think I alluded that I think there are different versions now, right? Because I feel like I saw one that was like all these Wiccan images of like the Visigoths and stuff. I have no idea.
Right.
Awesome. Let's see what else. Yeah, I don't know. The last one that was on here I saw was like, basically, is California collapsing? There was a condo, a one bed or a studio condo in San Francisco that purchased in 2015 for $450K, just sold for 200. Is there cratering in California? Question is, and there was a second article about 68 billion worth of I want to say it was 60 something billion worth of debt coming due or something.
Yeah. The other piece in California.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, the other piece is that California has not paid back their loans to the federal government for unemployment compensation. And the way the federal government gets that money back, like the mob, since we were talking about the mob, they don't go after the state; they go after individual taxpayers, business taxpayers. So, the state of California, I think the state of New York, and there's a couple others, maybe Illinois, I'm not sure, but business owners are potentially, probably going to get hit with a surtax by the federal government because the state didn't pay back its loan.
Holy shit!
So yeah, collapse.
Interesting.
Collapse is
imminent. So, how does that affect Newsom? Let me ask you a question. Is Newsom actually, beyond the optics of like he kind of has, some people say movie star good looks. I don't know if that's actually true. Whatever, but he's got a good smile. He looks slick. All these things. Some of these things are actually go against politicians in our current era, actually. So, Does he have a future in, let's say, in the near future? Does he have 2028 or 2032? Do you think he has legs? Do you think he's able to be a real contender?
No, no. I think that.
In a sense, too.
I mean, because California is not a particularly well-run state.
Yeah.
Politically, it is to the left of everywhere else in the United States. And what is to recommend him? And again, I think he is a modestly talented politician. If you were unfortunate enough to see the Newsom-DeSantis debate, you could see that he's not great. He's okay. And, basically, and that comes from, and again, I think a fair reading of it is that he lost the debate to DeSantis, whatever losing means. He came off less than well than DeSantis, and DeSantis is terrible at this. It's not like he was doing. It's not like he was doing Barack Obama in his prime. He was doing Ron DeSantis, who's at 14% in the Republican primary, for Christ's sake. And so, and I think that comes from, and you see it also, and DeSantis suffers from it too, when you're in basically a one-party state with no real press opposition. There's no tension. There's no way to hone your skills. You don't become a good debater.
Agreed.
You don't become a good polymath. You don't become quick on your feet because you're going to get the gentleman's pass every time. You're going to get the Harvard pass, or I think it's the Yale pass. Everybody gets an A, right? Yeah. And I think that, so what's to recommend him as opposed to, I'll go back to Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who is in a purple state and has really good, who came out of a really tough. I mean, I lost to him in his first election. I did his opponent. Yeah.
And he was AG? Was that what it was, or was he Secretary of State? AG, I think, right?
Yeah, he was Attorney General. Before he was Attorney General, he was a county commissioner in a Philadelphia college county. And I had the incumbent commissioner that he beat us. Or he beat one of my clients. There were two clients. They run as a team, and I lost one of them. But he's a very astute politician who kind of, the ground wasn't smoke and he arose. I mean, he's been doing those shitty city council or those shitty county council meetings and those shitty county budget meetings. And, he's been going to the cheese festival in Luzerne County. I mean, he's been doing that shit. So he's got a really good high level of political skill in a hostile environment. I mean,
totally agree with you. I think
politicians are always shocked when they go into Iowa and New Hampshire and they come from their hugely popular in the state, and voters go, you know what? Fuck you. And they're like, right?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, we talked before about Kentucky. We talked about Mississippi. And now to throw Josh Shapiro in the mix, I think Democrats would be doing themselves a real service to be looking for a deep bench of talent outside of the coasts, if they really want to. And also they focusing at state level politics really would help them more as well. I love that you actually, it's so funny that you brought up, damn it. I don't know. There was one, you mentioned something and it was another thing I wanted to touch on, but I guess we, all right. Running out of time, lightning round, over, under, unless there's any news that I missed that you think, hey, we should cover this.
I mean, we can talk about, the Ivy League fiasco before Congress.
Oh, that's what it was. Yes, you brought up Harvard. Last week, I said over, under, one of the presidents is gone. Yeah, I said, I think over, one of them will be gone. Yeah. So I would have scored some. I would have won some money on that one.
Yeah, I had the under on that, and because, by the way, and the one that went, University of Pennsylvania president, pretty much went because the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, threw her under the bus.
Yes, he did.
You know?
Yes, he did.
So
he's not an idiot.
No, and again, I mean, there needs to be. I mean, there needs to be a penalty for stupidity, and she was the penalty. I mean, they weren't trick questions. I mean, it was pretty. It wasn't hard to say, I'm against hunting the Jews on campus. I mean, that was basically what they had to say. Right. And they couldn't figure out how to do it. What's interesting is that, like, reading about all the law firms and all the money they spent preparing for that hearing, and you kind of go like,
yeah.
Right.
There's been some analysis, though. I don't know if you follow the All In podcast and some other places. There's been some analysis that actually they would have been far better off to not be prepared with lawyers, because it all did come across way too legalistic. And the question was a very simple question about a level of morality. Yes. Not even that, actually. I think it was just a common sense question. Is calling for genocide against your bullying policy? I think that and you could forget about genocide against Jews or anything, is calling for genocide of a group. Is that against your bullying policy? Yeah, I would assume that it is, right? Yes. I mean, and calling for the mass termination of groups of people. Yeah, I think that probably does violate our policy.
And whoever prepared her, and by the way, the next day her doing that hostage video was hysterical.
Oh, that was even worse. That might be what sunk her ultimately.
I think so. And basically, hey, everything I said yesterday was wrong and a lie. But let me tell you, and you kind of go, and it looked like, I mean, they stuck her in a corner. She was out of focus. I mean, it was like I've been in 24-hour Walgreens that have been lit better.
Right.
But like, you shouldn't survive here that stupid, because again, a congressional hearing, a congressional investigation, a grand jury investigation is one thing. A congressional hearing is theater. That's what it is. Once you get to the question parts, it's theater. It's not investigation. The investigation stuff has all been done by the staff ahead of time. And so you're going to be asked these yes or no questions you're going to be asked loaded questions and do this kabuki dance. And that's what you prepare them for. You don't prepare them for, what the definition of, as Bill Clinton said, it depends what your meaning of is,
Right.
I mean, if they'd said, of course, calling for genocide of students is wrong, and our speech code is against that, but we have to balance that with our traditional belief in the First Amendment. That's the answer. That's the fucking answer.
Right.
And it's like, then it becomes like, we haven't always done it perfectly. And one of the initiatives we've started, I mean, I could do that coming off a 3-day bender and it would have been okay. But it goes to how, I think it goes to how intellectually and morally corrupt they are, that they couldn't come up with that answer, that it's wrong.
Oh, that's interesting. My take on it is not about a level of corruption. My take on it is that the quote unquote like intellectual, sometimes you're just thinking too much, man. It's a very simple question. Is calling for genocide allowed by your policy? And I wouldn't even, if it was me, I wouldn't have even elaborated. I'd been like, yeah, it's against our policy 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember like in LA doing real estate development, one of my the owner of one of the companies, kind of a mentor, you're trying to navigate city bureaucracy, getting permits and building permits and stuff like that. You have to go through code reviews. And the best advice was always like, just answer the question being asked and shut up.
Yeah.
Don't continue to elaborate. You go to court. Did you see, were you turning left illegally? No. Don't go on to say, I didn't see the sign, blah, blah. No, I didn't. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a yes or no answer. So watching them give these, I went back and I watched as much of it as I could. I just realized like you're overdoing it because you're being too intellectual about it. You're trying to find the perfect legalistic like thing that you were told to answer with, rather than just saying like yes or no. You know, I don't know that that's a corruption. I think it's like just a stupidity. Like you can become so smart you're stupid sometimes, or so book educated that you become stupid.
I think it's corruption because I think that it shouldn't be hard to ask that kind of ethically fairly straightforward question. Do you favor, calling for genocides of students on campus? No.
Yeah.
Taking on the powerful pro-genocide side. I mean, but to your point, it's like if any of them said when she, whatever Stefanik babbled on with, if they said, yes, I agree. Well, what did you? Well, we've taken actions, and we're happy to report back, but they're ongoing because this is happening right now as we speak, and it won't be tolerated.
For sure, right?
And she'd have her mid six-figure job with stock options now, right? I guess.
Right. Yeah.
All right,
that's an interesting one. Okay, cool. You gonna jump off, or do you have time for one over under?
I've got time for one over under, and then I gotta jump.
Perfect. All right. I'll let you choose either Giuliani defamation award over under 10 million or Navalny is dead over under. Which one you want to answer? Either one. Throw it out.
Navalny's dead over.
Okay. All right. Very simple. And then we can sign off on that. That's beautiful.
All right, man.
Not for him.
I'll look back on other things, and I'll talk to you soon, man.
Okay.
Good catching up.
All right. I'll talk to you later.